60% of our economy are hourly workers, 60%. And there's absolutely nothing for them to prove or validate anything that they do.
Right.
These are the unsung heroes of our quality of life. Our daily lives depend on them.
Absolutely.
They stock our shelves. They fix our streets. They serve us our meals. You know, this is something I've said over and over again. It's a segment of the workforce that is often overlooked, underappreciated, undervalued, but boy, do we miss them when they're not there.
100%.
It's the first workforce community for frontline workers, offering them a transferable employment record. We have clients that have increased their retention by 50%. Now, this is huge saving. Think of us as LinkedIn for hourly workers.
Gotcha. Welcome back to another episode of the Southern Executive Experience. Today, I'm here with Justin Henshaw from Gage here and employment app. Sorry, what was the description of your app again? I went totally blank there for a second.
It's the first workforce community for frontline workers, offering them a transferable employment record.
Awesome. And that's probably why I didn't remember that. That's a mouthful.
A little bit.
Yeah, well, thank you for coming on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Maybe start off a little bit by introducing yourself to my viewers and just kind of telling a little bit about your background.
Sure. Yeah. I'm from here, here being Glenn County, born and raised pretty much on St. Simons. When I was younger, after high school, I moved to New York City, chasing childhood dreams of becoming an actor. Had a lot of fun up there for a couple of years. I was actually living there when 9/11 happened, and that's when the fun stopped, I guess.
Yeah.
And I was inspired by that day. I'd never considered joining the military, but I was inspired that day, and I was very emotional and upset, as obviously most of us were. And so I joined the Marine Corps. I spent the next 6 years in the infantry, multiple combat tours to Iraq and Afghanistan. And then when I was 28 in 2008, I decided to get out and in hopes of starting a family and moving on with my life.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. I think we all remember where we were that day. And I actually came very close to joining the Marines myself. When I went to college, and I ended up playing college football. When I left football, I tried to go be a normal student, and I just didn't have it in me at that time. But I was about to join the Marines, and my father offered me a job, and I started selling copiers.
Well.
So I was really close, and I was meeting with a recruiter, and I was probably I was trying to get back in shape so I could actually do it. And
my family, nobody in my family was really in the military, and especially not my parents, and so it wasn't something I had planned for, but. It's what it was. And then so I got out in 2008. I took my GI Bill, went to college, found out that the local college back here at home, was doing 4-year degrees. Came here, started a couple businesses when I was in school. Started a DJ company, a wedding entertainment company. That's still in business today and thriving. Awesome. It's called iSound, formerly known as Island Sound.
Okay.
We do anywhere from 20 to 30 weddings a week, and it's a really great business. But I started that in college. Started a food truck in college. Don't recommend it, but it was kind of my first big lesson. But it did catapult me into the restaurant industry, and so from there I started a local chain and independent brand of frozen yogurt shops called Fuse. A lot of people know it here. And then that's, kind of, we did 4 stores. The last one didn't quite work out. So when the lease was up, we closed it down. And so we have 3 now. And then we started franchising recently. And we just sold our first franchise in St. Augustine coming soon. So,
awesome.
We're excited about that. And then, I got into the franchise game myself. I started a couple Jimmy John's, a couple Smoothie Kings, and a few others. And, but then, I guess the reason that's relevant is that the Gage was happening in the background. I had the idea for Gage literally when I started my first frozen yogurt shop, and then it just kind of evolved, and finally, I guess about 4 or 5 years ago, I started getting really serious with it. Like, let's do this. And I guess the idea of Gage was kind of like, the workforce community for frontline workers.
Right.
Think of us as LinkedIn for hourly workers.
Gotcha.
I guess the idea really came from whenever I started employing people, particularly younger generation, particularly shift and hourly workers, frontline workers, I realized that there was something really broken, something wrong. And I think it might have been, looking back at it, I think it might have been like going from the military into college. And if you look at every other aspect of employment and the workforce, there's always a validated, verified way to prove who you are.
Yeah.
And prove what you've done. Yep. Like in the military, you have a service record, you get badges and medals, and I could prove absolutely everything I ever did in the military. And what was spectacular about the service record is that it belongs to me. It's my property.
Right.
Like my chain of command, my sergeants, my captains, and everybody in my leadership, they can contribute to it, but it was mine.
Right.
And today it's still in a safety deposit box for me. College is the same
like your
way.
Permanent record.
Yeah, it's a permanent. It's a record, and that is a way of making it matter.
Mm-hmm.
Like even the essence of time in service matters. Like the longer you're in service, the more promotions you get, the higher you go up.
Right.
You grow. Right.
Yeah.
Isn't that what we all want? And college is the same way. You have a transcript, you have tests and scores, and you get a piece of paper that says that you're more valuable than somebody without that piece of paper. Right.
Right.
Now that piece of paper could be an underwater basket weaving, but it's still
it still shows you did something.
It shows that you can accomplish something, and it proves that you know what you're capable of.
Right. Right.
And then even in executive entrepreneurship, we have LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's pretty much a monopoly, more of a networking effect, but it still somewhat validates, what you do, what you are, what you've done.
That's right.
And then let's go even further. Gig workers, contractors,
Mm-hmm.
They have platforms. They have, and every single platform has reviews, ratings,
Fiverr, Upwork,
profile,
those kind of things.
Profile with images. So, like, this is what I'm done. This is what I'm capable of.
Yep.
Like if you go on thumbtack.com or something, you find a painter, you get all these reviews and pictures and images, and it's some way of proving and validating what that person can do.
Right. So
But
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I mean, I guess in the void in the workforce
Mm-hmm.
is frontline or shift and hourly workers. 60% of our economy are hourly workers. 60%. And there's absolutely nothing for them to prove or validate anything that they do.
Right.
So we wonder, like the old man saying, "What's wrong with these kids today?" What's wrong is it doesn't matter. Like they clock in, clock out, go to sleep, repeat. There's no way for them to grow. There's no way for them to show or prove anything that they do. So work hard, don't work hard. It doesn't matter.
Everything's going to be it's Groundhog Day, doing the same thing over and over again.
Exactly. It's disposable.
Mm-hmm.
They can walk out, go to the next store, make a quarter an hour more, and there's just really there's nothing there.
And it really didn't matter what they did at the last job because there's nothing tying them to them. And if they did a good job or bad job, there's nothing to prove it.
Yeah, and that's the vision.
No track record.
To be able to and the studies are apparent. I mean, that they're all over the place. But whenever you add credentials,
Mm-hmm.
when you add credentials to the otherwise uncredentialed or the non-credentialed, but somebody that without credentials, but the person with credentials make up to 40% more than someone without.
And that's wow. Just having some certification or some kind of.
And you can Google that. That's the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So whenever you have a credential, now that credential again could be that piece of paper that says you're really good at underwater basket weaving,
right?
Or it could be a license, a certification, training. And I make fun about the underwater, but I mean, it's basically a piece of paper that says that whatever reason you are more valuable than someone without it.
Right. Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, that piece of paper takes 2-4 years of your life, a lot of money, tens of thousands of dollars. People get into debt over it.
Yep.
But what if you can somewhat validate or prove what you're worth in the workforce without that process?
That'd be strong. I mean, that's something that you could prove what you've done and
just by the nature of showing up every day, just by the nature of doing what you do, doing the right things, servicing your customers, showing up on time, responding to your managers, just being a contributing member of our workforce and being able to prove it.
Something to hold yourself accountable. And you said it earlier, or maybe I heard it from I watched a few of your other podcasts. It makes it matter. It makes what you're doing matter.
Our tagline is "Make work count," and that's the problem is that for 60% of the economy, our workforce, it doesn't.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to solve for. And we have a very unique product, and it basically, if you told a bunch of people you want to do LinkedIn for shift and hourly work, well, everybody loves that idea. Everybody loves it.
Yeah.
But how do you pull it off without a mountain of funding? Well, you do it with revenue, and the revenue comes from specific utilities, valuable utilities to the employer, the business.
Right.
If we can, and we have, and I think I know that we have evidence to prove this with our prototype. If you can say to the business owner that we're going to increase your accountability, increase your retention, lower no call, no shows, that's another pain point, and improve your culture and improve your performance overall within your workforce, then take my money here. Yeah, please.
Absolutely.
So that's what we've done. We've created a community platform where both employers and employees can connect with each other. Coworkers and peers can connect with each other. And it is, again, LinkedIn for hourly workers, but with a very specific utility where managers and employers can contribute to their employees' profile on their Gage page, which is the new resume.
Gotcha. Now, we talked about a little bit of this before when you just came in. My wife was one of your beta testers at her ABA clinic, Light of Hope here in town.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And they've loved it. I think kind of what you just said, being able kind of the employees to give, data boys and give a
high five.
High five. That's what it is.
That's one of our touch points.
There you go. It gives a high five to each other. She says they're all the time doing that back and forth, and it just builds morale, and it's just a way for everybody to kind of engage with each other and just be more of a team.
Yeah. Light of Hope has been an incredible partner of ours in the beginning, and they like I said, they were one of the earliest ones to onboard what is essentially the prototype that we've built this company on. Now, we are in the process of building the second generation of the product, which is more of the scalable, robust version of the app.
Gotcha.
More community, more connections, peer-to-peer connections, peer-to-peer endorsements, connecting to places of business even before they have a subscription. Like this sense of community is what we're building with Gen 2. Right. But your wife and Light of Hope has been incredible partners, and we see it. Actually, we've interviewed them quite a few times. They're one of 60 business accounts that we have, but they've been powerful partners from the very beginning.
Now, is it just? You're in the restaurants and they're in the kind of the daycare or ABA therapy. What are you in all types of businesses?
Yeah, that's actually one of the challenges because in tech there's a saying that you can't don't try to boil the ocean, right? You have to pick a vertical. You have to pick a very specific target to go after, an ICP, ideal customer profile. To be honest, I know that Gage was built in restaurants, but that's not. We're in banking right now. We're in fitness. We're in healthcare. Awesome. We're in hotels, hospitality, convenience stores. It really, it's across the board because guess what? Frontline workers or hourly workers service most businesses, right? Most businesses have. Banking, I would have never imagined in a million years that banking would love Gage, but it does because they have, frontline cashiers,
tellers, and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Now, are the executives at the top level? No, because they got LinkedIn,
right?
But they still are part of that community because they employ shift and hourly workers.
So how does it work when an employee leaves the company that works with your software? Do they get like you said, a report? Do they get a file they can send to people?
Well, they keep everything.
Okay,
that's one of the most unique features. That's what we are. So if you look at Gage as, and I don't like that people would do this, but if you were to, because there's nothing out there like Gage, if you were to look at Gage as like an HR system, like a management system. They all have the same problem. You could go through the list of them. There's hundreds of them. Bamboo, HR, Paycor, Paycom. There's all sorts of management tools out there. They all have the same problem. The data is owned by the business.
Yeah.
So that means that whenever the employee leaves, because leaving and transitioning is part of life, very few people could say they've had the one job their entire life, right?
Exactly. Especially hourly workers, you would probably think even more.
Exactly.
Changing jobs.
So when they leave, that information, that data, that incredible data, the proof of their work, their blood, sweat, and tears, all of it disappears to them. It goes away. Right. They can't take it with them. I kind of back in the day, I used to use the analogy of a filing cabinet because some businesses still use a filing cabinet. They still use manila folders and check spreadsheets
around South Georgia a lot more than you think.
It's fine. I'm not knocking it.
Yeah,
I'm not knocking it.
Absolutely.
But it's imagine the employee trying to take that filing cabinet with them when they leave.
Right.
and then so whenever they leave, there's no way for them to prove or validate what they did. And so that is why the employee doesn't really care about it.
Right. Yeah. Once they're out of sight, out of mind, they're gone. They moving on to the next person.
Yeah. So the platform we're offering is a world where it is their data, and the employer gets their data too. They get to keep the files of what happened when the employee worked for them. That's nothing new. That's what we have now.
Mm-hmm.
But what we're offering is where the employee gets to keep their data and take it with them. And hopefully take it to their next place of employment, which is part of our go-to-market strategy through organic growth.
So as they would, I could see where somebody would take that resume or take that information to a company that doesn't use you, and then
it's already happening. It's like, hey, we're using, I've got Gage. Here's my Gage page. We call the Gage page the new resume. So it's literally a link that they can send to an employer. The employer can check out everything they've done. It's validated. Their work history is validated if they connect it to a place of business that uses Gage.
Right.
And everything is proven. So it increases the worth of that worker, right? We have countless interviews of asking an employer, listen, if you had one position open, you had 2 applicants in front of you, one of them has Gage, you've learned what Gage is, and one of them doesn't. They might have a paper resume or something. Knowing nothing else, which one is more valuable? Which one would you hire knowing nothing else if you were only forced to take one?
The Gage, absolutely.
Yeah. So that is where, matter of fact, we just got through a Techstars accelerator. We were very proud to be accepted into Techstars, the Techstars universe the last year. And so we went through a Techstars accelerator, and the accelerator we went through is for economic mobility, making sure people can grow, making sure people can make more money and live not paycheck to paycheck, right? I mean, to really grow.
Right.
They loved Gage. They still love, they were so supportive of the idea of Gage. They're like, this is a real game changer.
Yeah. It sounds like it. Now, does the history follow if that employee had some no-call, no-shows at their last job? I guess if you have Gage and you go to another company that can also has Gage, can they see everything that happened at the other job, or is it on a?
Yeah, so it cuts both ways, right?
Okay,
so like if you do have negative things on your profile, you can challenge them just like you would a review online or a something on your credit report or something like that. You can challenge them, and we've been very friendly to the employees that say that, like, hey, this is not right. This was not accurate. This didn't happen. So there's going to be a challenge system. There's also a way to pin certain things to the top of the Gage page with the next generation of the product. Okay. So like imagine, again, just using, I don't like to refer or compare Gage to reviews like online. I don't like the review system. I think it's awful. What we offer is a much more objective system, and I'll explain that in a second. But like the review system, you're able to pin certain things at the top. So if you get an evaluation, a high five from a colleague, a customer shout out that's coming soon. Imagine customers being able to give shout outs, positive only shout outs to certain workers. And being able to pin that to your Gage page. Like, how much more valuable would you be to a future employer?
Like a server or anybody be able to,
imagine. So like right now a customer, I'm sorry, I'm weaving this conversation, but imagine like right now a customer goes into a restaurant, they have a great experience. Chances are they have a great experience because of that particular worker.
Yeah, absolutely.
And everybody, of course, behind the scenes. But that worker, like if you wanted to go give a review online, the review is for the business.
Right.
It's not for the worker. So you go on Yelp or whatever and you say, hey, I had a great time. Terry was awesome. But it's not for Terry. That doesn't help Terry.
No.
But we're offering a platform where Terry gets something. So you can give a shout out to say Terry, like she's awesome. And then that goes into her profile or Gage page.
That's pretty neat that you can let your customers give
it's on the pipe. It's very close on the pipeline. It's probably Gen 2 0.1 or 0.2,
right?
But it's coming. That was something that was loud and clear. There were certain features that, like your wife, in Light of Hope too, that they many customers liked them. They were like, we need this and we need that, and so we've taken all of that feedback and built it into Gen 2.
So when is Gen 2 getting launched? Do y'all have a release date yet?
Yeah, I'm going to not put a date on that.
Right.
Our investors certainly know the timeline.
Yep.
But we will say spring, spring of this year. perhaps early summer. That's when you can expect to see it.
Cool.
But it definitely will be. We're targeting Q2 of this year.
And what are the big? I know you've talked about a few of them, but what are the biggest changes there from the old system to the new system?
Well, the onboarding process. So with the prototype, the onboarding was a disaster because it was a prototype, and I'm going to say that over and over again. And we broke the wheels off of this prototype. I mean, you know, you take an idea and you build it as affordable as possible. There's a famous quote out there that says, "If you're not embarrassed by the first launch of your product, you launch too late."
Yeah.
So like you've got to get it out there and get it in the hands of users to see what it is that they really want, what it is they're really going to use and find valuable. So we did that, and I think we did a good job, but there were some really big gaps. Onboarding, like we had to get like a CSV file, we had to get employee files. It was completely business initiated, like the business signed up, the business had to add everybody. Now with Gen 2, it's going to be it is social media, at least the language is. It's very easy. It's like literally signing out. Everybody self-onboards. Employee fills out their information. The employer fills out their information, and they literally connect to each other just like a friend request.
Gotcha.
And that is going to unlock our potential because when we launched the prototype, we got up to 60 business accounts, but we had over 200 on our wait list, and we weren't able to service them. And that's by design because we didn't, like the prototype was falling apart, and we were keeping it together with duct tape and super glue.
Yeah, to pick and choose your best situations.
It's just like, it was just like, okay, wait, two things. We can either pause and just service our customers that we have now, take their feedback and raise the money that we need to build the really, you know, the scalable, robust version of the app. And that's what we did.
Awesome.
But the features, so onboarding is going to be drastically improved. Messaging, that was the number one. Like right now, messaging is very much one way. Like I'll send somebody a high five, I'll send somebody evaluation, I'll send somebody a shout out, whatever. But that is one way. So like we need a robust messaging system because what the customers were doing was they were hopping out of Gage to communicate in whatever messaging platform they're using.
Right.
And that just doesn't help with engagement, right? So messaging, workplace, teamwork, it all starts with communication, and messaging is it going to be. So it's going to be a very
more user-friendly experience and a little easier to start up with and to change, I guess.
Yeah, so you know, it's really, again, inspired by social media.
Yeah.
Because it is a community, and there are certain UI and UX expectations of a client that or a user that says like, I want this to work this way, and that way is social media. You know, a wall, a feed, likes, follows. You know, we might call them something different. We might call them endorsements or whatever, but it's going to be the same language, and that's what the inspiration of Gen 2 is. Yeah.
Awesome. Now, is it when you say social media? Is there a each company have like their own page, I guess, and they get to share things and stuff on it, or?
Yeah, so every company gets to be able to create their own profile, and we're working through the process of that because we want to make sure that everybody has access to Gage. But to access, you know, certain features of Gage, an employer is going to need to sign up for a subscription. Now we kept it like, I think the second pricing is going to be very inexpensive. It's going to be very cheap because we don't need it to be expensive if we get massive adoption, and I believe that that's what we're going to have. But the employer pays for it because we have a direct utility for them and a way for them to save money. We have clients that have saved up to 50%, has increased their retention by 50%. Now, this is huge savings.
Yeah. Unbelievable. Well, that's the biggest issue any business faces is keeping employees and finding new ones and keeping
that revolving door. You got to shut it down. You got to increase your retention. Now, your goal shouldn't be to keep your employees forever.
No.
Your goal is to keep them longer. And again, the ways we reward the system or the employee and their profile is by job tenure. How long do they stay at a job? Yep. And so like literally the longer you stay at any given job, the much higher your score and profile looks, right?
Yeah. And I think recently I've seen a trend. I know younger people, but even people our age and older, people don't stay in the same position anymore. They move around a lot more. They jump jobs and they change all the time.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the employees. The employees, this doesn't work without the employees wanting it, and we've proven that 97% do want it. Yep. There is a small sliver that doesn't want that, and I think that tracks with everything we know about culture and society, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But the ones that do want are the ones that want to grow and to excel. But at the end of the day, this is a voluntary system. That's one of the things we have to communicate in our messaging is that if you want in, great. But if you don't, delete it. Delete it.
Yeah.
Just when you leave your job, just delete it. So there's this mentality that, I'm going to be stuck with this thing. No, absolutely not. We want you to want it.
Right.
And many do. But there's nothing controlling or restrictive,
You can always, like I said, when you leave, you can get done with it and not use it anymore.
But if you use it, then you get more job opportunities, higher pay.
Yeah. I could see how that would be a huge benefit. I spent a lot of time in hourly working. When I wasn't working for my father, I took a little time. I moved off to Colorado for a little bit, my 20s, that kind of thing. And everything that you're saying makes a lot of sense to me because I lived that life. I lived the life of a server and a bartender and that kind of thing. And like you said, everywhere you went, you were starting from scratch. And,
right.
And there was I worked for Vail Resorts, or I worked for Breakers down in Florida one time. There's no connection there. There's no way you knew that. There's no way to show all the good things you learned at one place or all the high fives you got at one place to the next.
100%. I mean, this is the idea has been validated over and over again by some incredibly smart people, way smarter than me.
Yeah, yeah.
The idea is there and it is needed 100%. When you introduce that language into the workforce, you're going to revolutionize it. You're going to revolutionize it. Everybody has a chance to grow. Everybody has a chance to excel. And just by literally working, not by going and getting a fancy degree, not by doing. And I'm not knocking that. If that's your journey, then awesome. But not everybody needs to go to college.
No.
And not everybody needs to take that path. So I feel like if you give somebody a platform to grow. And prove and validate who they are, then that is an awesome alternative.
It is. Well, it sounds like you built a heck of a system, and it really seems to fit a need, a need for the hourly worker. And I had no idea you said 60% or 80 million Americans are hourly workers.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge chunk of our economy.
Yeah. It's,
our workforce.
And these are, let's just be honest. These are the unsung heroes of our quality of life. Our daily lives depend on them.
Absolutely.
They stock our shelves. They fix our streets. They serve us our meals. This is something I've said over and over again. It's a segment of the workforce that is often overlooked, underappreciated, undervalued. But boy, do we miss them when they're not there.
100%.
And nothing was more COVID, right? That's the most, whenever you can't, get your coffee, whenever you, can't go to the grocery store, whenever you can't get groceries because the shelves are not stocked. We need them. We need them. And I believe that they are, again, underappreciated, undervalued, and it's time for a new day. It's time for them to have a platform that recognizes them, that rewards them just by being the heroes that they are.
Yeah. Well, your passion for this is obvious. You love what you're doing, and I think you've got something great. This seems like something great. You're changing the game when it comes to hourly workers and their resumes and how they're gonna do things and change jobs and how they're gonna progress. So it's amazing. Real quick before I go, is there anything else you'd like to share about your company now, or anything, visions, or anything you got going on in the future?
Well, I couldn't let you peek too far behind the curtain. We do. So we're launching. I mentioned we're launching Q2, the Gen 2. Sign up for our wait list. It's gagework.com. The wait list is growing every day. Whether you're an employer or an employee, you can sign up for the wait list. And the onboarding might be a little bit different, but everybody will be more or less invited to onboard. We are offering some really cool, we're offering founding member badges for the first 100,000. Don't quote me on that. We might change that, but we're offering founding member badges, which is something incredible to put on your profile. With one of the things one of our business owners said was, they love Gage because Gage works without working. And I said, well, what does that mean? And this is one of our early, I'm not going to name his name because I don't want to embarrass him, but he said that, if an employee comes to me and they say that I'm in Gage, then I know everything I need to know.
Right.
I was like, you're in Gage, you want to use Gage, you like Gage? Yes, sir. You're hired.
Yeah.
And that just shows who they are, you know? So yeah, we're launching. I would invite everybody to join the wait list. It's gagework.com. We are going to be launching in Atlanta. When I say launching in Atlanta, it just means all of our marketing efforts are going in Atlanta, but of course it'll be turned on nationwide. We have national brand pilots lined up across the country with Smoothie King, Bojangles, a few others. And once it's turned on for everybody. We just are going to be focusing our marketing vertical in Atlanta.
Awesome. Well, I know you got something you got to get to, and I appreciate your time. I honestly, I've got a whole bunch of questions. I feel like we could do a whole nother podcast on entrepreneurship and everything else. So I'd love to have you on again.
Absolutely.
But I appreciate your time, and thanks everybody for tuning in to this episode, and hope you have a great day.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.